Now, one of Hillary Clinton's critiques of Bernie Sanders is that he's not helping the Democrats get elected in down-ballot races. He's not raising money for them because he's not one of us. He doesn't care. But I do. She says, in fact, that when she launched her joint fundraising committee with the state Democratic parties last summer, she said that she was going to use that to help rebuild the Democratic Party from the ground up. However, according to a new Politico report, that's actually crap. According to this analysis of the latest Federal Election Commission filings, less than an ironic 1% of the $61 million raised by the Hillary Victory Fund has actually benefited those state Democratic parties. Now first, what is the Hillary Victory Fund and what does it do? Well, Politico explains. The Hillary Victory Fund is a so-called joint fundraising committee comprised of Clinton's presidential campaign, the Democratic National Committee, and 32 state Democratic Party committees. Now, this allows Clinton to solicit checks of $350,000 or more from her super rich donors. For example, like the ones at George Clooney's house or at a concert at Radio City featuring Katy Perry and Elton John. Those are just two of the fundraisers that she had gotten hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from. Now, wait a minute. $350,000? I thought there was a limit. Well, okay, there is a limit. There's $2,700 per person to a candidate. But see, it gets around those limits by being a committee. So they can raise more because of the rules on these fundraising committees are different than individual donations. The thing is, though, that this arrangement of the rules allow Clinton to take most of that money. Remember, she says she's going to help fund the state Democratic parties to rebuild the Democratic Party into something stronger. Well, it turns out she's taking most of that money and using it for her presidential campaign. Once again, I go back to the article. Quote, the Victory Fund has transferred $3.8 million to the state parties, but almost all of that cash, $3.3 million, or about 88% of the funds, was quickly transferred back to the DNC, usually within a day or two, by the Clinton staffer who controls the committee. So here's what they do. The Hillary Victory Fund gathers all of this money from donations, right? They transfer it to the state parties, and then the state parties gives it to the DNC, or just about all of it to the DNC. And of course, the DNC will give up a lot of that money to the Hillary Clinton campaign. What's left for the state parties? What's left for the down-ballot Democrats? Apparently not much, but I'll get to that. By contrast, the Victory Fund has transferred $15.4 million to Clinton's campaign and $5.7 million to the DNC, which will work closely with Clinton's campaign if and when she becomes the party's nominee. And most of the $23.3 million spent directly by the Victory Fund has gone towards expenses that appear to have directly benefited Clinton's campaign. Basically, what they're saying is that most of that money that was raised by the Hillary Victory Fund only ends up helping the Hillary Clinton campaign, even though it was actually supposed to help the state parties. And of course, those parties, they're not happy. According to an official within one participating state party, quote, it's a one-sided benefit. Now that official prefers to remain unnamed, and they preferred not to talk about the arrangement on the record. Why? Because they're afraid of the DNC and the Clinton campaign. And one thing you don't want to do is draw the ire of Hillary Clinton and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So basically, what they're saying is, hey, shut up, enjoy your crumbs. That's all you're going to get from us, while we reap the entire benefit. Now, not only do they not want to talk about this because of fear of the Hillary Clinton campaign, the DNC leadership, but if they do talk, then they're actually supposed to have talking points ready for the media. And this is according to multiple sources familiar with these interactions. The article says, quote, the DNC has given us some guidance on what they're saying, but it's not clear what we should be saying. I don't think anyone wants to get crosswise with the National Party because we do need their resources. But everyone who entered into these agreements was doing it because they were asked to, not because there are immediately clear benefits. It continues, some fundraisers who work for state parties predict this arrangement could actually hurt participating state parties. They worry that participating states that aren't presidential battlegrounds and lack competitive Senate races could see very little return on investment from the DNC or Clinton's campaign and are essentially acting as money laundering conduits for them. Money laundering conduits for the Clinton campaign. They're getting no benefit from this and could actually be hurt if they're not in one of the so-called important swing states. That's amazing, but there's more. Let's see. And for party committees in contested states, there is another risk. They might find themselves unable to accept cash from rich donors whose checks to the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund counted towards their $10,000 donation limit to the state party in question. Even if that party never got to spend the money because it was transferred to the DNC. They might not even be able to collect money for these state Democratic parties in order to use it to run Democrats in these states, in order to get a progressive majority. She's taking all that money and leaving the crumbs, and if there are no crumbs, then it might make it so that because of the rules, because of the way these joint fundraising committees are set up, they might actually not be able to raise any money. That's amazing. And of course, the Clinton campaign, through the Hillary Victory Fund, ends up having a pretty tight control over who gets that money. Quote, the fund represents by far the most ambitious use to date of a joint fundraising committee, and arguably one of the most ambitious hard dollar fundraising efforts in modern presidential politics. Until 2014, the most an individual could have given to such a committee was $123,000. But in April of that year, the Supreme Court, in McCutcheon versus FEC, struck down aggregate limits on total giving to federal campaigns, allowing maximum donations to as many different committees as a donor wanted. Basically, what that did is that it paved the way for these kinds of joint fundraising committees, which could accept large checks based on how and the number and the type of the committees that agreed to participate. In the case of the Hillary Victory Fund, the maximum donation in 2016 is $356,100 based on the maximum donations of $2,700 to Hillary for America for the primary election, $33,400 to the DNC, and $10,000 to the federal accounts of each of the 32 state parties. According to agreements signed by the participating committees, which were obtained by Politico, that money is required to be distributed, at least initially, based on a formula set forth in joint fundraising agreements signed by the participants. Who gets it? Well, it wouldn't surprise you to know that Hillary Clinton gets it first. The first $2,700 goes to Clinton, the next $33,400 goes to the DNC, and any remaining funds, i.e. the crumbs, are to be distributed among the state parties, all 32 of them. But what happens to that money after the initial distribution is left to the discretion of the Clinton campaign. Its chief operating officer, Beth Jones, is the treasurer of the Victory Fund, and FEC filings show that within a day, most transfers from the Victory Fund to the state parties, identical sums were transferred from the state party accounts straight to the DNC, straight to the pockets of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Amazing. Amazing. There's more. They have an example of Minnesota. The Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party received $43,500 from the Victory Fund on November 2nd, only to transfer the same amount back to the DNC the same day. That pattern repeated itself after the Minnesota Party received transfers from the Victory Fund of $20,600 on December 1st. The party sent the same amount back to the DNC the next day, and $150,000 on January 4th, which also, unsurprisingly, went right back to the DNC. That means that Minnesota, in their participation in the Victory Fund, ended up netting them $0 through the end of March. They got nothing. Dick. That's what happened. Meanwhile, the DNC got an extra $214,100 in cash routed through Minnesota, much of which the DNC would not have been able to accept directly, since it came from donors who had already maxed out their donations to the National Party Committee. This is all they used is Minnesota is a conduit for money. It's money laundering. That's what it is. And look, there are more state parties that have had the same thing happen. Colorado, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, right? Most of these states were nothing more than conduits for money for Hillary Clinton. That's amazing. Not only that, but there's another area in which a lot of critics, including me, say that the Hillary Victory Fund appears to be pushing the bounds of joint fundraising is in its online advertising campaigns. That includes a lot of ads urging readers to stop Trump or to support Hillary Clinton. Now, joint fundraising committees are allowed to pay for ads, yes, but they are forbidden from funding campaign advertising urging voters to vote for or against specific candidates. Those types of ads qualify as electioneering expenses that are supposed to be, well, regulated. But unfortunately, they're not. Now, of course, the Clinton campaign says those Stop Trump ads aren't urging readers to vote against Trump. No. We just want it to stop Trump. Well, how do you stop Trump other than voting against him? This is a clear violation of these rules. But see, the FEC, they're not going to do anything about it. Why? Because the FEC is ineffectual. Right now, they have 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans. These Republicans don't believe at all in any type of campaign finance rules. They can't even agree what kind of food they want to get for breakfast, much less on what rules they should enforce. So how are they going to stop this obvious fraud? It's not. They're not. It's amazing. So here's what we have, right? State Democratic parties getting less than 1% of all the money donated to the Hillary Victory Fund that she says is supposed to help Democrats rebuild the Democratic Party. It only seems like they're building up Hillary Clinton and not the rest of the Democratic Party. How strange. So no, I don't believe that she should get credit for raising money for other Democrats when all they did is use those rules set down in McCutcheon to use those states as legal money laundering schemes in order to fund her campaign. She gets no credit for that. Why? Because the state parties only get the crumbs that the Clinton campaign and the DNC could not have. And that is why I say that our campaign finance system is so laughably weak and so incredibly corrupt. This is why Hillary Clinton and all of these rules, look, this is why we have to change our system, okay? This is a good example. This is money laundering, plain and simple, for the benefit of one campaign, one person, with the promise of helping all the other campaigns, the state parties. This is what we're doing, man. This is what the Democratic Party has come down to. We've got to change that system. We've got to get the money out of politics, and we've got to set some new rules.